The suspenseful encounter. Ethan Walker adjusted his oxygen mask as he trudged through the dense forest of the uncharted planet, Xerion 7. The air here shimmered with an eerie green hue, and the trees twisted unnaturally toward the sky, their branches like skeletal arms reaching for the heavens. He was supposed to be alone, just a simple prospector looking for rare minerals to trade back home. Yet, something had felt off ever since his ship landed. A faint trail of broken branches and deep claw marks in the ground hinted that he wasn't the only one here. The forest was silent, too silent. No hum of alien insects, no rustle of leaves, just his own labored breathing. As he pushed aside a thick curtain of vines, he froze. Ahead, slumped against the base of a glowing, crystal-like tree, was a figure. It wasn't human. The alien skin shimmered like liquid silver under Xerion's twin moons. Its long, slender limbs lay limp, and its chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Ethan's hand instinctively went to the small plasma pistol on his hip. He had heard the stories. Humans who ventured too far into the unknown often didn't return. Aliens could be ruthless, territorial, and sometimes downright lethal. Yet, as he took a cautious step closer, he noticed something unusual. The alien wasn't armed. In fact, it seemed injured. A dark, viscous fluid, its blood, he assumed, oozed from a wound on its side, soaking the ground beneath it. Its breathing was faint, almost imperceptible. Despite his fear, Ethan couldn't ignore the way the alien's body trembled, as though it were fighting to stay alive. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, to leave before whatever caused this creature's injuries came back. But then the alien's eyes flickered open, large, luminous orbs that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. They locked onto Ethan, filled with a mixture of terror and desperation. The alien tried to move, its long fingers twitching weakly, but it collapsed back against the tree, a strangled sound escaping its lips. Ethan hesitated. He knew helping it could be a mistake. What if it attacked him once it recovered? What if it was bait, luring him into a trap? But there was something in those eyes, something raw and pleading that he couldn't ignore. "Easy there," Ethan said, his voice soft yet uncertain. He didn't even know if it could understand him. Slowly, he crouched a few feet away, keeping his pistol within reach. "I'm not here to hurt you." The alien flinched at his voice, its body tensing as though expecting a blow. Ethan raised his hands, palms out, trying to appear non-threatening. "Look, I can help you," he continued, gesturing toward the medical kit strapped to his belt. "But you've got to trust me." The alien's gaze shifted to the kit, then back to him. It let out a series of faint clicks and whistles. Its language, he assumed. Though Ethan couldn't understand the words, the tone was clear, wary but desperate. Taking a deep breath, Ethan inched closer. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to spring back if the alien lashed out. Carefully, he pulled out the medical kit and opened it, revealing an assortment of bandages and antiseptics. The alien's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of hope breaking through its fear. "This might sting," Ethan warned as he poured a clear liquid onto a cloth and pressed it against the wound. The alien hissed in pain, its hands twitching, but not striking out. I know. Hang in there." As he worked, Ethan noticed more details. The alien's body was covered in faint, glowing lines that pulsed softly like veins carrying liquid light. Its wound was deep, likely from some kind of weapon. Whatever had attacked it wasn't far away. He could feel it in the way the air seemed to thrum with tension. "Who did this to you?" Ethan murmured, glancing around the dark forest. He didn't expect an answer, but the alien made another series of clicks and whistles, this time slower, as if trying to communicate. Ethan frowned. "I wish I could understand you." When he finished bandaging the wound, the alien's breathing steadied slightly. It looked at him again, this time with less fear and more curiosity. Ethan could almost feel it assessing him, trying to decide if he was a friend or just another threat. He gave a small, tired smile. "There, that should hold for now." Before he could say more, a distant hum filled the air. It started faint, like the buzz of a faraway engine, but quickly grew louder. Ethan's heart sank. He knew that sound. It was the unmistakable whine of a search drone. The kind used by bounty hunters, or worse. Whoever had attacked this alien was still hunting it. And now, they were dangerously close. The alien's eyes widened, and it tried to push itself up, but its body was too weak. Ethan stood, his mind racing. He could leave now, disappear into the forest, and let the hunters take what they came for. It wasn't his fight. But as he looked down at the alien, barely clinging to life, he knew he couldn't walk away. "Looks like we got company," he said, grabbing his pistol and offering the alien his hand. "If you want to live, you'll have to trust me." The alien hesitated for a heartbeat, then reached out, its glowing fingers curling around his. Together, they vanished into the shadows, the hum of the drone growing ever closer. A dangerous rescue. The forest was no longer silent. The sharp hum of the search drone sliced through the thick air like a predator's growl, growing louder with each passing second. Ethan tightened his grip on the alien's hand. Its skin felt cool and smooth, almost metallic. Every instinct screamed at him to drop the stranger and run, but something deeper, something irrational, pushed him forward. "Come on," he whispered, tugging the alien to its feet. It staggered, nearly collapsing again. Its wound was worse than Ethan had thought, and its strength was waning fast. "We don't have time for this." The alien clicked softly, its voice faint but urgent. Though Ethan couldn't understand the words, he got the message. It was trying to tell him something important. It gestured weakly to a device strapped to its wrist, a small glowing disc with alien symbols etched into it. Ethan hesitated, then reached for it. The alien nodded weakly, confirming his unspoken question. "What does this thing do?" He muttered to himself, turning it over in his hands. Before he could figure it out, the whine of the drone became a deafening roar. Through the trees, a sleek, metallic form emerged, its red scanning lights sweeping the forest floor. Ethan's pulse quickened. "We're out of time," he said. He stuffed the alien's device into his pocket and slung its arm over his shoulder, half carrying, half dragging it deeper into the forest. Every step was a struggle. The alien was heavier than it looked, and the uneven terrain made it nearly impossible to move quickly. Behind them, the drone's searchlight flickered closer, illuminating patches of ground in blinding white. The pair reached a dense cluster of twisted trees, their thick trunks forming a natural barrier. Ethan shoved the alien behind one of the trunks, pressing himself flat against the bark. He held his breath as the drone's light swept over their hiding spot, its mechanical hum vibrating through the ground. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours. The drone hovered mere feet away, its sensors clicking and whirring. Ethan gripped his plasma pistol tightly, his knuckles white. He wasn't sure if the weapon could even damage the drone, but it was all he had. Just as the light began to move away, the alien made a small, involuntary sound, a soft gasp of pain. Ethan's stomach dropped. The drone froze, its sensors locking onto their position. With a sharp beep, it unleashed a burst of energy, obliterating the tree they were hiding behind. Ethan and the alien were thrown to the ground, debris raining down around them. Ethan scrambled to his feet, firing his pistol wildly at the drone. The blasts barely scratched its surface, but it bought them a few precious seconds. "Run," he shouted, hauling the alien to its feet again. The alien stumbled, but Ethan didn't let go. He dragged it toward a narrow ravine he had noticed earlier, a deep crack in the earth partially hidden by overgrown vegetation. If they could reach it, they might have a chance to lose the drone. The ground trembled as the drone gave chase, firing another burst of energy that scorched the earth just inches from Ethan's heels. "Not today," he growled, pushing himself harder. His lungs burned, and his legs screamed in protest, but he refused to stop. They reached the edge of the ravine. Ethan didn't hesitate. He jumped, pulling the alien with him. The world blurred as they tumbled down the steep slope, landing in a heap at the bottom. Pain shot through Ethan's arm, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the drone hovering above the ravine, scanning for their location. The alien stirred beside him, its glowing eyes flickering open. It reached for its wrist, motioning frantically toward the device Ethan had pocketed earlier. Realizing what it wanted, Ethan pulled it out and handed it over. The alien's fingers moved with surprising speed, activating the device with a series of precise taps. A low hum emanated from the disk, followed by a burst of light that enveloped them both. Ethan flinched, expecting an explosion, but instead, the light bent and shimmered, creating a shimmering dome around them. The drone's searchlight passed over their position without stopping. "It's a cloaking device," Ethan whispered, watching as the drone moved away, unable to see them. The alien nodded weakly, collapsing against the wall of the ravine. For a moment, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. They were safe, at least for now. He turned to the alien, his voice low but firm. "You've got a lot of explaining to do." The alien met his gaze, its luminous eyes filled with exhaustion and gratitude. It spoke again, its clicks and whistles slow and deliberate. Though Ethan still couldn't understand the words, the tone was clear. "Thank you." Ethan shook his head, a small, humorless laugh escaping his lips. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this mess." He leaned back against the cold stone, staring up at the alien sky. The stars above were unfamiliar, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning of their fight for survival. Pursued by shadows, the shimmering light of the cloaking field faded slowly, leaving Ethan and the alien stranded in the dimly lit ravine. The distant hum of the drone's engines grew fainter, but Ethan knew it wasn't gone. It was hunting them, and it would return. Ethan turned to the alien, who was slumped against the jagged wall, its glowing eyes half closed. The makeshift bandages he had applied earlier were soaked through, and its silvery blood dripped onto the cracked earth. It was fading fast. "Hey, stay with me," Ethan said, kneeling beside it. He wasn't sure if it understood, but he needed to keep it conscious. "I didn't drag you all this way just for you to give up now." The alien's luminous eyes flickered open, and it let out a series of soft, melodic clicks and whistles. It gestured weakly toward the glowing device still clutched in its hand. Ethan frowned. "What are you trying to tell me?" He leaned in closer as the alien pressed the device against its chest, triggering a faint holographic display. The projection was small but detailed, showing a map of the surrounding area. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he traced the lines and symbols. The alien pointed to a flashing icon near the edge of the map, a structure, or maybe a ship, hidden somewhere deep in the forest. "That's where you're trying to go?" Ethan asked. The alien nodded faintly. "Great. We've got a destination. But how are we supposed to get there without becoming drone bait?" Before the alien could respond, a sharp metallic sound echoed through the ravine. Ethan froze, his hand instinctively moving to his pistol. The sound grew louder, mechanical legs scraping against stone, moving closer. The drone wasn't alone. "Wonderful," Ethan muttered, gripping his pistol tighter. He glanced at the alien, who was too weak to move. "Stay here. I'll handle this." Climbing the ravine wall as silently as possible, Ethan peeked over the edge. His heart sank. 3 smaller, spider-like hunter drones skittered through the forest, their red sensor lights scanning the ground. They were smaller and faster than the main drone, designed to flush out prey and trap it. Ethan ducked back down, his mind racing. He couldn't fight them, not with his limited firepower. Running wasn't an option either. The alien wouldn't make it far in its current state. They needed a plan, and fast. The alien let out a soft whistle, drawing Ethan's attention. It gestured weakly toward the map again, this time highlighting a series of symbols Ethan hadn't noticed before. They were scattered across the terrain, forming a pattern. "Traps." Ethan's eyes lit up. "You've got traps set up out there?" he asked, his voice hushed but excited. The alien nodded, its movements slow and deliberate. Ethan studied the map, memorizing the locations. Okay, that might just save us. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. Stay here. If this works, we'll have a clear path to your ship, or whatever that thing is. The alien's glowing eyes met his, filled with a mixture of gratitude and worry. Ethan gave it a reassuring nod. I'll be back. Creeping out of the ravine, Ethan moved swiftly and silently through the underbrush. The hunter drones were spread out, their sensor lights sweeping the forest floor like searchlights. Ethan kept low, his heart pounding with every step. Reaching the first trap site marked on the map, he spotted a strange, glowing ore embedded in the ground. The alien's technology was unlike anything Ethan had seen before, but he trusted the map. Carefully, he triggered the trap. The orb emitted a high-pitched whine, followed by a burst of energy that radiated outward. One of the hunter drones froze mid-step, its legs locking up as sparks erupted from its body. It collapsed with a metallic thud, motionless. One down, Ethan whispered, moving to the next trap. He repeated the process, luring another drone into range. This time, the trap unleashed a net-like energy field, ensnaring the drone and short-circuiting its systems. It twitched violently before going still. But as Ethan moved toward the third trap, the final drone spotted him. Its sensor light fixed on him, and it let out a sharp, piercing alarm. Ethan dove behind a fallen tree as the drone opened fire, its energy blasts scorching the ground around him. Damn it! He cursed, fumbling for his pistol. He returned fire, but the drone was too fast, darting from side to side with mechanical precision. The trap was only a few feet away, but getting to it seemed impossible under the drone's relentless assault. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the chaos, a sharp, resonant hum. Ethan risked a glance and saw the alien standing at the edge of the ravine, holding its glowing device. Despite its injuries, it had managed to climb out. The device emitted a pulse of energy that struck the drone, disrupting its systems long enough for Ethan to trigger the final trap. The ground beneath the drone erupted, engulfing it in a burst of bright light. When the dust settled, all 3 hunter drones lay destroyed. Ethan rushed back to the alien, who was leaning heavily against a tree. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded, though his tone was more worried than angry. "You could have gotten yourself killed." The alien let out a weak but melodic whistle, its eyes glinting with determination. Ethan sighed, shaking his head. "You're stubborn, you know that. Fine. Let's get moving before the big one comes back." With the path finally clear, Ethan helped the alien back into the forest. The flashing icon on the map felt closer now, but so did the danger. They weren't out of the woods yet, not by a long shot. The ultimate gamble. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly, its eerie silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hum of drones still prowling in the skies above. Ethan trudged forward, supporting the alien, whose silvery blood now left a faint trail on the ground. The glowing map in Ethan's hand showed their destination was close, but their time was running out. "This better be worth it," Ethan muttered under his breath. His boots sank into the soft, mossy ground, and his arms ached from holding up the alien's weight. He glanced down at his companion. "Hey, you holding up?" The alien's luminous eyes flickered open, and it let out a faint whistle, its attempt at a response. It gestured weakly toward the map, its fingers trembling. Ethan followed the motion and saw what looked like a series of jagged lines cutting through their path. "A ravine?" Ethan guessed. The alien nodded faintly, confirming his suspicion. "Great. Another obstacle." The glowing beacon marking their destination pulsed brighter now, just beyond the ravine. Ethan's brow furrowed as he studied the hologram. The ravine wasn't just an obstacle. It was wide, treacherous, and flanked by jagged cliffs. Crossing it would be nearly impossible, especially with the alien in its weakened state. But there was no turning back. As they approached the edge, Ethan scanned the area for anything that might help. His eyes landed on an ancient, vine-covered bridge swaying precariously in the wind. It looked like it hadn't been used in centuries. One wrong step, and it could collapse, sending them plunging into the abyss. "Of course, it's a death trap," Ethan said with a humorless chuckle. He turned to the alien. "Guess this is where we roll the dice." The alien made a soft clicking noise, its gaze shifting from Ethan to the bridge. It seemed to understand the risk but offered no alternatives. Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing. If they didn't cross, the drones would find them. If they fell, well, he didn't want to think about that. "Okay, here's the plan," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "I'll go first and make sure it's stable. If it holds, I'll come back for you. Got it?" The alien hesitated, then nodded weakly. Ethan set it down gently against a tree and stepped onto the bridge. The ancient wood groaned under his weight, and the ropes creaked ominously. Each step felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of knives. The wind howled through the ravine, shaking the bridge and threatening to tear it apart. Halfway across, Ethan heard the unmistakable hum of a drone. He froze, gripping the fraying ropes as his heart pounded. Looking up, he saw the drone hovering above the ravine, its red sensors sweeping the area. It hadn't spotted them yet, but it was only a matter of time. "Come on, Ethan," he muttered to himself, forcing his legs to move, one step at a time. Reaching the other side, he turned back to the alien. It was watching him with a mix of hope and fear, its glowing eyes locked onto him. Ethan waved, signaling for it to stay put. "Hold on. I'll..." The drone's searchlight suddenly swung toward the alien, illuminating it like a spotlight. The alien froze, and Ethan's stomach dropped. No, no, no. The drone let out a sharp mechanical screech and opened fire. Energy blasts tore through the trees, sending splinters flying. The alien scrambled for cover, but it was too weak to move quickly. Without thinking, Ethan drew his pistol and fired at the drone, shouting, "Over here, you metal bastard." The drone turned its attention to Ethan, its sensors locking onto him. "Yeah, that's right. Come get me," he yelled, retreating into the trees on his side of the ravine. The drone pursued, firing wildly, its blasts scorching the ground around him. Ethan darted between the trees, his mind racing. He needed a plan, and fast. Spotting a cluster of fallen logs near the edge of the ravine, an idea struck him. He skidded to a stop, fumbling for the alien device still in his pocket. Activating it, he set it down among the logs and waited. The drone hovered closer, its sensors focused solely on him. "Come on," Ethan whispered, gripping his pistol. "Just a little closer." The drone descended, its weapons charging for a final shot. At the last second, Ethan dove out of the way and fired at the alien device. The resulting explosion sent a shockwave through the ravine, shattering the drone into 1,000 pieces. Ethan shielded his face as debris rained down around him. When the dust settled, Ethan stumbled to his feet, his ears ringing. "Still got it," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. He turned back to the bridge, relief flooding through him when he saw the alien was unharmed. Crossing back, Ethan helped the alien onto the bridge. It clung to him tightly as they made their way across, the wood groaning louder with every step. By some miracle, they reached the other side just as the sun began to rise, its golden light cutting through the darkness. "We made it," Ethan said, his voice filled with both exhaustion and triumph. He looked down at the alien, who met his gaze with a faint but genuine glow of gratitude. For the first time, it managed a soft, melodic whistle that almost sounded like a laugh. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't get used to me saving your life, all right? This is a one-time thing." The alien's eyes sparkled with amusement, and for a brief moment, the tension between them melted away. But the beacon on the map pulsed brighter now, reminding them that their journey wasn't over. "Come on," Ethan said, helping the alien to its feet. "Let's finish this." Together, they pushed forward, the shadow of the Empire looming ever closer behind them. The betrayal and revelation. The forest thinned out as Ethan and the alien stumbled closer to their destination. The flashing beacon on the map was now so bright, it seemed to cast its own light in the pre-dawn gloom. Ethan was exhausted, his body aching from the constant strain, but the alien was in far worse shape. Its silvery skin had dulled, and its glowing veins now pulsed faintly, a sign of its fading strength. "Not much farther," Ethan muttered, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring the alien or himself. He adjusted his grip, supporting its weight as they pushed through the last stretch of dense foliage. Then they saw it, a massive, dome-shaped structure hidden beneath a canopy of twisted, ancient trees. The walls shimmered faintly, almost as if the building was alive, reacting to their presence. Ethan whistled softly, impressed despite himself. "This is it, huh?" he said, glancing down at the alien. It nodded weakly, its glowing eyes fixed on the structure with a mix of relief and urgency. As they approached, the structure emitted a soft hum, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing an entrance. The alien gestured for Ethan to follow, its movements slow but determined. Ethan hesitated. His instincts told him to be cautious. He had come too far to walk into a trap now. But the alien's desperation was clear, and he couldn't abandon it. The corridor inside was dimly lit, the walls lined with intricate, pulsing patterns that seemed to respond to their presence. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the building was watching them. The alien led him deeper, its steps faltering until it finally collapsed against the wall. Ethan caught it just in time. "Hey, stay with me," he said, lowering it gently to the floor. "We're almost there, right?" Before the alien could respond, a new sound echoed through the corridor, the unmistakable click of boots on metal. Ethan's hand flew to his pistol as three figures emerged from the shadows. They were aliens, like his companion, but their armor was sleek and menacing, and their weapons were drawn. Ethan raised his pistol, stepping protectively in front of the injured alien. "Back off," he growled. One of the armored figures tilted its head, studying him with glowing eyes that mirrored his companion's. It spoke in a language Ethan couldn't understand, its voice sharp and commanding. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon. "I don't know what you're saying, but I'm not looking for trouble." To his surprise, the figure switched to broken but understandable English. "You? Human. Why you? Here." "I'm helping," Ethan said, nodding toward his companion. "This one was hurt. I saved them." The figure let out a harsh laugh, its voice dripping with disdain. "You fool. You save. Traitor." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" Before he could get an answer, the injured alien stirred, letting out a weak but defiant whistle. It spoke rapidly in its own language, and the armored figure's demeanor shifted. They exchanged glances, their weapons lowering slightly. The leader turned back to Ethan, its voice cold. "You no understand. This one betray. Us, Empire." Ethan frowned, glancing down at his companion. "Betrayed the Empire. Good. Sounds like your Empire's the problem." The alien leader's eyes narrowed. "You know no truth. This one cost. Many lives. You save. Mistake." Ethan's chest tightened. He had suspected his companion was important, maybe even dangerous, but now he was questioning everything. What did they do? The injured alien let out a sharp whistle, cutting off the leader. It spoke with renewed strength, its voice filled with emotion. Ethan couldn't understand the words, but he could see the fire in its glowing eyes. Whatever it was saying, it believed it. The leader listened, then sneered. "You trust, traitor, foolish human." "Maybe I am," Ethan shot back, stepping closer. "But I've seen how your empire operates. Hunting down injured people, sending killer drones, doesn't exactly scream good guys to me." The leader didn't respond immediately, but its silence was telling. Finally, it gestured to its companions, who holstered their weapons. "You no leave. Alive. But Maybe truth, change mind. Ethan tensed as they motioned for him to follow. He glanced at his companion, who gave a faint nod. "All right," he said wearily. "But if this is a trap, you'll regret it." They were led deeper into the structure, where the walls opened into a vast chamber. Holograms filled the space, displaying scenes of destruction, burning cities, fallen ships, and alien soldiers locked in desperate battles. Ethan's stomach churned as he took it all in. "This," the leader said, pointing to the injured alien, "they're doing. Rebel leader. Fight Empire. Cost many lives." Ethan looked at his companion, who didn't deny the accusation. Instead, it met his gaze with a steady, unwavering look. Ethan crouched beside it. "Is this true?" he asked softly. The alien clicked and whistled, its tone calm but firm. Ethan didn't need to understand the words to grasp the meaning. It had fought the Empire, yes, but it had done so for a reason. It believed in something, and it had paid the price. Standing, Ethan turned to the leader. "And how many lives has your empire taken? How many worlds have you burned? Don't act like you're innocent." The leader's expression darkened. "You no understand. Human." "You're right," Ethan said, stepping closer. "I don't understand. But I know this. I've seen enough to know I'm on the right side." The leader's companions exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Ethan could feel the tension in the air, the fragile balance between trust and conflict. Finally, the leader let out a frustrated growl. "You leave. Take. Traitor. But hunted. No safe." Ethan nodded. "We'll take our chances." As they left the chamber, Ethan helped the alien to its feet. "You've got a lot of explaining to do," he said, his tone light but firm. The alien let out a soft whistle, its eyes glowing faintly with gratitude. They weren't safe yet, but for the first time, Ethan felt like they had a real chance. And he wasn't about to give up now. The final stand. The path beyond the alien structure was a stark contrast to the dense forest they had traversed. The ground was cracked and barren, and a faint haze hung in the air, as if the planet itself had grown weary of life. The beacon on the map pulsed brighter than ever, and Ethan could now see their destination. A sleek alien ship partially buried under rubble and overgrown vines. "That's our ride?" Ethan asked, glancing at his companion. The alien gave a faint nod, its glowing eyes reflecting the ship's metallic sheen. It was the last piece of hope in a galaxy that seemed determined to extinguish them. But hope wasn't enough to guarantee survival. As they approached the ship, Ethan's instincts flared. The air was too still, too quiet. The drones were gone, but the sense of being hunted hadn't left him. "Something's wrong," Ethan muttered, scanning their surroundings. He wasn't wrong. A sudden, deafening roar split the silence as a massive Imperial dropship descended from the sky, its engines kicking up a storm of dust and debris. Ethan shielded his face, cursing under his breath. "Of course, they beat us here." The dropship landed with a thud, and its side doors hissed open. Out poured a squad of heavily armed Imperial soldiers, their sleek armor glinting under the pale sunlight. At their head was a towering figure, clad in ornate black armor with a helmet that obscured its face. Ethan didn't need an introduction to know this was the one in charge. "Well," Ethan said, gripping his pistol, "this just got interesting." The alien beside him stumbled, its strength fading fast. Ethan caught it before it fell. "Stay with me," he said, his voice firm. "We're not done yet." The leader of the Imperial squad stepped forward, its voice booming through a translator. "Human, you are outmatched. Surrender the traitor, and you may yet leave this place alive." Ethan snorted. "Yeah, I've heard that one before." He turned to the alien. "Any bright ideas?" The alien's glowing eyes flicked to the ship, then back to Ethan. It let out a series of clicks and whistles, gesturing to a device on its wrist. Ethan frowned. "What's that supposed to?" "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." The alien's gestures became more urgent. Ethan sighed. "All right, I'll trust you. But if this blows up in my face, I'm haunting you." He activated the device, and the ship responded immediately. Its engines roared to life, and panels along its hull shifted, revealing hidden weapons. The Imperial soldiers froze, their leader barking orders. "That's what I'm talking about," Ethan said, a grin breaking through his exhaustion. "You've got your own guns." But the soldiers weren't about to retreat. They opened fire, their energy blasts tearing through the air. Ethan dragged the alien behind a jagged piece of rubble, firing back with his pistol. The ship's automated weapons unleashed a volley of retaliatory fire, cutting down several soldiers, but the Imperials kept advancing. "This is bad," Ethan muttered, ducking as a blast narrowly missed his head. "Really bad." The alien reached for its wrist device again, tapping a sequence of commands. A section of the ship's hull slid open, revealing a small entrance. It gestured for Ethan to move. "You want me to go in there?" Ethan asked, glancing at the advancing soldiers. "And leave you out here?" "Not happening." The alien made a sharp, insistent whistle, shoving the device into Ethan's hand. Its glowing eyes burned with determination as it pointed toward the ship, then back at the soldiers. The message was clear. It would hold them off while Ethan got the ship operational. "No way," Ethan said, shaking his head. "We're in this together." The alien let out a frustrated hiss, its body trembling with effort. It pushed Ethan toward the ship, its expression leaving no room for argument. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Fine, but you'd better survive this." He bolted toward the ship, ducking and weaving as blasts rained down around him. Reaching the open hatch, he scrambled inside and found himself in the cockpit. The controls were alien, but the layout was intuitive enough for him to recognize what he needed to do. "All right, let's see if I can fly this thing," he muttered, flipping switches and pressing buttons. The ship's systems hummed to life, and a holographic display lit up before him. Outside, the alien stood tall, its glowing veins pulsing brighter than ever. It raised its arms, and a shimmering energy field erupted around it. The Imperial soldiers hesitated, their leader barking orders, but the alien didn't falter. It unleashed a burst of energy that sent several soldiers flying, buying Ethan precious time. Inside the ship, Ethan's hands flew across the controls. The engines roared louder, and the ship began to lift off. Come on," he muttered, glancing out the viewport. The alien was still holding its ground, but the Imperial leader wasn't retreating. It raised a massive weapon, aiming directly at the alien. Ethan's heart pounded. No, not like this. Without thinking, he activated the ship's external weapons, targeting the leader. The blast struck true, sending the Imperial leader flying. The remaining soldiers scattered, their formation broken. Ethan slammed the controls, bringing the ship closer to the alien. The hatch opened, and he shouted, "Get in, now." The alien hesitated for a fraction of a second before staggering toward the ship. Ethan reached out, grabbing its arm and hauling it inside. The hatch sealed behind them, and the ship rocketed into the sky, leaving the Imperials behind. As the planet shrank below them, Ethan slumped back in the pilot's seat, his chest heaving. The alien sat beside him, its glowing eyes dim but alive. "We did it," Ethan said, a weary smile breaking across his face. "We actually did it." The alien let out a soft, melodic whistle, its expression one of quiet gratitude. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "You're one stubborn son of a—" He stopped, catching the faint glint of amusement in its eyes. All right. You're welcome." But as they left the atmosphere, Ethan knew this wasn't the end. The Empire wouldn't stop hunting them, and their fight was far from over. "Guess we got some planning to do," Ethan said, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. "You with me?" The alien nodded, its glowing eyes meeting his. Together, they had defied impossible odds. And together, they would face whatever came next. This section ramps up the tension, action, and emotional stakes, culminating in a desperate fight for survival and the solidification of Ethan and the aliens' partnership. Let me know if you'd like more adjustments. A legacy of sacrifice. The stars stretched endlessly before them as the ship soared through the void, leaving the Imperial hunters and the desolate planet far behind. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, his hands gripping the alien controls as he struggled to keep the unfamiliar ship steady. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, but it wasn't enough to drown out the chaos in his mind. Beside him, the alien rested against the co-pilot's seat, its glowing veins flickering faintly. Its strength was fading faster now, the effects of its injuries catching up despite their temporary victory. Ethan glanced over, his jaw tightening. "Don't you dare give up on me," he muttered. "We didn't come this far just for you to quit." The alien's eyes fluttered open, its soft, melodic whistle filling the cockpit. It gestured weakly toward the holographic display that lit up in front of them. Ethan followed its gaze and saw a map of nearby star systems, one of them marked with a pulsating icon. "That's where we're going?" Ethan asked. The alien nodded faintly. The destination was clearly important, but there was no way of knowing what awaited them there. Ethan sighed, his voice softer now. "All right, let's get you there." As he adjusted the ship's trajectory, an alert flashed across the console. Ethan frowned, tapping the display. The ship's sensors had picked up something, a fleet of Imperial ships, closing in fast. "Damn it," he muttered. The Empire wasn't letting them go without a fight. The alien stirred, its glowing eyes narrowing as it studied the display. It reached for the controls, its movements weak but deliberate. Ethan watched as it input a series of commands, activating a sequence he didn't understand. "What are you doing?" he asked. The alien turned to him, its expression calm but resolute. It let out a series of clicks and whistles, the tone unmistakable even without translation. It was preparing for one last stand. "No," Ethan said firmly, shaking his head. "We're not doing this. We can outrun them. There has to be another way." The alien whistled again, this time slower, more deliberate. It gestured toward the display, then at Ethan, its glowing eyes locking onto his with a quiet intensity. Ethan's stomach sank as he realized what it was saying. "You're not staying behind," he said, his voice rising. "I don't care what kind of hero complex you've got. We're in this together." The alien let out a soft, almost mournful whistle, its gaze unwavering. Ethan's chest tightened. He had seen that look before, on soldiers, friends, people who had made up their minds to sacrifice everything for the greater good. "No," he said again, more desperate now. "I didn't risk my life back there just to lose you now. We'll figure this out." The alien reached out, its cool, metallic fingers brushing against Ethan's arm. It clicked softly, a gesture of gratitude and something deeper, a farewell. Ethan's heart pounded as he watched the alien input the final sequence. The ship's systems hummed louder, and the holographic display shifted to show an expanding field of energy around the ship. Whatever the alien was activating, it wasn't meant for escape. It was a weapon, a devastating one. "You're going to use the ship as a bomb," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien nodded, its glowing veins pulsing faintly. Ethan shook his head. "No, I'm not letting you do this." The alien clicked again, more insistently this time. It gestured toward a smaller pod at the back of the ship, a single-person escape pod. The message was clear. Ethan could survive if he left now. "Damn it," Ethan muttered, running a hand through his hair. He wanted to argue, to fight, to refuse, but the determination in the alien's gaze left no room for negotiation. "Fine," he said finally, his voice breaking. "But I'm not leaving without making sure you're safe. If this is what you're doing, I'm going to buy you the time to make it count." The alien hesitated, then gave a small nod. Ethan rose from the pilot's chair, gripping its shoulder briefly before heading to the ship's weapon systems. He activated every automated turret, turning them toward the incoming fleet. "All right, "You Imperial bastards," he muttered, his hands flying across the controls. "Let's see how much trouble one human can cause." As the first Imperial ships came into range, the turrets unleashed a storm of firepower. Explosions lit up the darkness, and the fleet faltered, their formation breaking under the unexpected assault. Ethan grinned grimly, his heart pounding with adrenaline. Behind him, the alien worked tirelessly, its focus unbroken despite its fading strength. The energy field around the ship grew brighter, crackling with raw power. It was a weapon unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, and it was clear the Empire wasn't prepared for it. The ship shook violently as return fire from the fleet struck its hull. Alarms blared, and warning lights flashed across the console. Ethan held his ground, firing back with everything the ship had. "We're almost there," he shouted, glancing over his shoulder. "Tell me you're ready." The alien didn't respond, but the energy field reached its peak, enveloping the ship in a brilliant, blinding light. Ethan knew what it meant. The weapon was primed. He turned to the escape pod, his heart heavy. "I'll see you on the other side," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. The alien met his gaze one last time, its eyes filled with a quiet resolve. It clicked softly, a sound that Ethan chose to believe meant goodbye. Climbing into the pod, Ethan strapped himself in and activated the launch sequence. The pod ejected from the ship, hurtling into the void just as the energy field detonated. The explosion was immense, a burst of light and power that engulfed the Imperial fleet, wiping it out completely. Ethan's pod drifted in the aftermath, the stars eerily silent. He stared at the wreckage, his chest tight. The alien ship was gone, along with its pilot. "You stubborn idiot," he whispered, a small broken laugh escaping his lips. "You actually did it." As the pod systems guided him toward the nearest habitable planet, Ethan leaned back, his mind racing. The Empire had lost more than just a battle. They had lost control, their invincibility shattered by the actions of a single alien, and a human who refused to back down. Ethan knew this wasn't the end. The Empire would come for him, but he wasn't afraid. He had a story to tell, one that would inspire others to stand up, to fight back, to believe in something greater than themselves. He closed his eyes, the image of his alien companion etched into his memory. Their sacrifice wasn't just a loss. It was a spark, a legacy that would burn brighter than any star.